Imagine pulling up to the grocery store in a paid-off house worth $1 million, with stocks in your portfolio and savings most people will never see in their lifetime. And then imagine paying for your groceries with food stamps. Sounds impossible, right? It's not. It's happening right now, legally, and you're the one footing the bill. Welcome to the strangest open secret in American welfare policy. The federal SNAP program, what most people still call food stamps, was built for one purpose: feed people who genuinely cannot afford to eat. A safety net, a last resort. The kind of program almost everyone across the political spectrum agrees should exist in some form. But here's the part that got buried. A quiet loophole inside that program means households with significant assets, sometimes millionaire-level assets, can still qualify. And according to a recent piece in The Hill, this isn't a rare glitch. It's costing taxpayers billions. So how does a millionaire end up on food stamps? Let's walk through it, because once you see the mechanism, you can't unsee it. SNAP has eligibility rules. On paper, they sound strict. There's an income test. There's supposed to be an asset test, meaning if you've got too much in the bank or too much wealth sitting around, you don't qualify. That's the whole point of a needs-based program. You demonstrate need, you get help. You don't demonstrate need, you don't get help. Simple. Except it isn't simple, because over the years, a workaround quietly became the norm. It's called broad-based categorical eligibility. Ugly phrase, boring phrase. Easy to skim past in a policy document, which is exactly why it stuck around for so long without most voters ever hearing about it. Here's what it does in plain English. If a household qualifies for certain other low-tier benefits, even something as minor as receiving a brochure or a referral from a state assistance program, they can be automatically categorized as eligible for SNAP. And in many states, that automatic categorization waives the federal asset test entirely. Read that again. The asset test gets waived. Not lowered, not adjusted, waived, which means a household can have substantial savings, substantial investments, substantial property, and still walk through the door because a different program quietly stamped their paperwork. You can see how a rule designed to reduce bureaucracy turned into something else entirely. It started as a way to help working families avoid losing benefits the moment they saved a few $100s for an emergency. A reasonable idea. Nobody wants to punish someone for keeping a rainy day fund, but the loophole grew and grew and grew until the asset test, in a lot of places, basically stopped existing. So who's actually slipping through? The Hill's reporting points to households with significant assets qualifying for aid that was designed for people in genuine need. We're not talking about a family with a modest savings account. We're talking about households whose financial picture would shock the average taxpayer standing in line behind them at checkout. And here's the question that should be bothering you. If the program is sending benefits to people who don't need them, what's happening to the people who do? Because the SNAP budget isn't infinite. Every dollar that flows to a household that doesn't need it is a dollar that didn't go to one that does. That's not ideology. That's arithmetic. Now let's talk about the scale. Billions. With a B. That's the cost estimate tied to this loophole, not millions, not a rounding error. Billions of dollars in benefits flowing through a door that was supposed to be locked but quietly got propped open with a policy doorstop. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Why hasn't this been fixed? It's not a secret in Washington. Policy wonks have been writing about broad-based categorical eligibility for years. Inspectors general have flagged it. Reform proposals have come and gone. So why does it survive? A few reasons, and they're worth understanding. First, it's politically radioactive. The phrase food stamps carries enormous emotional weight in American politics. Any politician who touches the program risks being painted as cruel, as attacking the poor, as taking food from children, even when the actual reform would only affect wealthier households. The optics swallow the substance. Second, the loophole has defenders who argue it reduces administrative burden. They say verifying assets is expensive, intrusive, and pushes deserving families away. There's a real argument there. Asset tests done badly can punish exactly the people the program is trying to help. That's why this debate isn't just black and white. Third, and this is the quiet one, states have a lot of discretion. SNAP is federally funded, but state administered, which means the same federal program looks dramatically different depending on which state you live in. Some states have kept stricter standards, others have used the categorical eligibility door wide open. The result is a patchwork where your zip code can determine whether the asset test applies to your neighbor. So what does fixing it actually look like? The Hill's piece argues for closing the loophole, restoring a meaningful asset test, making sure that SNAP benefits flow to households that genuinely lack the resources to feed themselves, not to households with significant wealth who happen to qualify through a technicality. That sounds straightforward. It isn't. Because the moment you propose tightening eligibility, you run into the political minefield I just described. You also run into legitimate concerns about how to set the threshold. Where do you draw the line? What counts as an asset? Does a car count? A retirement account? A home? Get it wrong, and you hurt people. The program was built to help. Get it right, and you save taxpayers billions while strengthening the program's credibility. And credibility matters, because here's a truth that gets lost in the noise. Programs like SNAP only survive long term if the public believes they're working as intended. Every story about a millionaire collecting food stamps chips away at that trust. Every billion spent on households that don't need it makes it harder to defend the billions spent on households that desperately do. So the reform argument isn't really about cutting the program, it's about protecting it. Strange how often that gets missed in the shouting. Now let's pull back and look at the bigger pattern, because this isn't just a SNAP story. This is how a lot of government programs end up working. They start with a clear purpose. Over time, rules get layered on. Workarounds get added for good reasons. Then those workarounds get expanded, then expanded again, then nobody quite remembers why the original rule existed, and the workaround becomes the rule. You see it in tax policy, you see it in housing programs, you see it in healthcare subsidies. The same pattern repeats. A reasonable exception slowly eats the original intent until the program is doing something its founders never imagined. And the people who notice are usually the policy nerds, reading 400-page reports nobody else opens. By the time it makes the news, billions have already flowed through the gap. So what should you take away from all this? A few things. The first is that the food stamp program isn't broken in the way most people assume. It's not that the wrong people are gaming it from the outside. It's that the rules themselves quietly stopped enforcing the standard they were supposed to enforce. The loophole isn't fraud, it's policy, which is, in some ways, more frustrating, because fraud you can prosecute. Policy you have to legislate, and legislation is slow, messy, and politically dangerous. The second is that the framing matters. When you hear about millionaires on food stamps, the instinct is outrage. But outrage isn't the most useful response. Curiosity is. How did the rule get written? Who benefits from it staying the way it is? What would a smarter version look like? Those questions get you somewhere. The outrage just gets you a headline. The third is that programs designed to help people are only as good as the rules that govern them. A safety net with holes the size of a luxury car isn't really a safety net. It's a suggestion. And the longer the holes stay open, the harder it gets to convince taxpayers that the net is worth funding at all. The Hill's piece lands on a simple idea. Fix the loophole, restore the test, make sure the program does what it was built to do. Whether you agree with every detail of their proposal or not, the underlying question is hard to argue with. Should a program designed for the genuinely needy be sending billions to households that aren't? Most people ask that question plainly, would say no. The challenge is that the question is almost never asked plainly. It gets buried in jargon, wrapped in politics, lost in the noise of the broader welfare debate, which is exactly why loopholes like this survive for decades. Not because anyone is defending the outcome, but because nobody is forced to look directly at it. So now you've looked directly at it. You know the mechanism, you know the scale, you know why it persists, and you know what reform would actually require. The next time you hear someone argue about food stamps, listen for whether they're talking about the program as it was designed or the program as it actually operates, because those are two very different things. And the gap between them, measured in billions of dollars and unfed families, is the real story. The wildest part isn't that millionaires can get food stamps. The wildest part is that the rule letting them do it has a name, a history, and a defender in every state house. And almost nobody outside Washington has ever heard of it, until now.